So where did it all start? Started off in 1990 with the invasion of Kuwait. For a while I'd been thinking about joining the Army Reserves, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to get fit first. So my father was assistant manager at Yate Leisure Centre, so I was working out, I was doing weights, I was doing circuit training, I was doing running 3 times a week. I was pretty fit. Because he was assistant manager, I had access to it, so I utilised the resources, so to speak. So eventually I was unemployed, so eventually I got this job working for a company that made mosaics. And the strange thing is, this company that made mosaics for Saddam Hussein's palace and all sorts of other palaces around the Middle East. Oman, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq. Let me think of the other ones. Might even be Iran, I'm not sure. But, you know, all over the place. So if you've been to any of these palaces during the time of war, and you see all these fancy mosaics on domes and swimming pools, the company I worked for probably made them. I didn't go out there myself because you had to be a bit tough, because they had these bandits in these countries that there were you know, they like to bump people off in the most extreme manners, and it was, you know, you had to be a bit tough to go out there. So they were known as like fixers, so they would fix the mosaics to the plaster. My boss, he knew that I would wanted to join, so when the build-up for when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, there was all these troops massing to go to Saudi Arabia to kick them out of Kuwait, and my boss turned to me in front of the whole workforce and said, "You haven't got the bottle to join now, have you?" And as you can imagine, the red mist descended in front of the whole workforce. Now, I don't know if I should have thanked him or grabbed both shoulders, taken my glasses off and given him a lovely juicy Glasgow kiss. So the very next drill night, I dropped into the centre, the reservists, and said, "I want to join." And you know, they were all rushing around getting their kit together, and I'm thinking, what are they rushing around getting their kit together for? You know, they're only reservists. And as it was, they were 245 ambulance squadron, and well, the unit that they were supporting, a Royal Army Medical Corps, was already being sent there. You know, back then you had to volunteer, but most of them did. They volunteered to go. So as the war progressed, we didn't really know how long it was going to last, you know, in hindsight. Oh, it's a bit of a flood here. That's well flooded. I'm going to have to get another route. Let's walk back this way. So we didn't know how long it was going to last, did we? So yeah, we're all getting their kit together. And the weird thing was that there was another chap there. Now the catchment area for this centre was in Bristol. So you're talking, what, 400,000 people in Bristol? Let's jump over this river. 400,000 people in Bristol, and probably, I don't know, 600,000-700,000 around Bristol. And there was another chap joining at the same time as me, and he literally lived about 400 yards from me in the same street. What's the chances of that, eh? What are the chances? And no one else was joining at that period of time. I don't know why. It would build up to a war. But I had to join. I absolutely had to. So I had to join. God, I can remember when all this was a field, and now we've got big trees. So yeah, I had to join. So they're all rushing around getting their kit together. So after a few weeks, an assessment weekend came up, so I had to go off and be assessed, you know, fitness, mental capacity, I suppose, and that's command tasks, that kind of thing. So I went off and did it. Of course, I was super fit. They got me on the bars, you know, the dips on the bars, and I did about 30 before the bloke said 1. I went, what? Because I got a bit tired and dropped a bit lower. And then I did another 35. I was really fit. Like I said, my dad was assistant manager of a leisure centre, so they had all the gear there for circuit training, weight training. I was running. I was doing the lot, and I was really fit. I could do press-ups where you'd push off the ground, clap twice before going back down. How many of you could do that? Well, you probably couldn't do it now, but could you have done it 35 years ago? Because that's the time we're talking about here. So yeah, 35 years ago, we did a command task, and I was standing next to the officer, and he said, "Why aren't you participating, Denny?" with my coloured bib on. And I said, "I've already worked it out, sir." Explained the situation, and we did it. So the next time I got anything, I got a letter saying I'd been failed. And I thought I had flat feet, but I've recently found out flat feet is not a condition for failing. Always thought it was, but it's not. So I've put it down to not being able to read and write very well. At the time I thought I was dyslexic. I found out now recently that I'm autistic, so that probably had a bit of an effect. Let's go through here. Look, someone's built a shelter. Not a very good one. That's not going to stop the rain. So the very next day, I got on my motorcycle, I drove in, and got in there. You know, you got to ring the bell to get in if there's no one on the gate. So I rang the bell, they let me in. I went upstairs into the admin office. Why did I fail? I want to know. And of course, if you know anything about admin in the army, it's pretty useless. It's still pretty useless, even to this day, I think. Although they've probably got computers now, they're not writing it by hand. So yeah, so they said, "Oh, there's a warrant officer. There's a warrant officer here." So I went and saw this warrant officer, and unbeknownst to me, this warrant officer had been attached to the SAS. So is this young kid, 20 years old, coming in to demanding to know why he'd failed in the run-up to a war? And he's probably thinking, excuse my French. And anyway, so he got on the phone to the RSM, Regimental Sergeant Major, got onto their admin. Why did he fail? Well, we don't know. So the RSM said, why does he think he failed? Because they didn't know. And I said, well, it might be to do with being dyslexic and not being able to read and write. So right in front of this warrant officer, there was a newspaper called Soldier. I don't know if they make it anymore, I haven't seen it about. But anyway, he said, read a bit of it. So I read a couple of paragraphs. He said, yeah, I read it okay. And the RSM said, right, he's in. So I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall after I left that office, listening to that conversation. That would have been great. Of course, they didn't know, did they? They didn't know that my boss gave me no alternative but to join. So they were all rushing around trying to get all their kit together, because, you know, we were getting close to being called up. Well, some people were. I wouldn't have been called up because I hadn't done phase 1 basic training. But you're all rushing around, and then before we know it, the war came to an end. They didn't follow Saddam Hussein into Iraq. You know, if they'd have done that back then, we wouldn't have had the trouble later on. So yeah, it came to an end. And the very next drill night, all these potential recruits turned up. And this is the funniest bit of the story, really is. Yeah, they all turned up. 55 turned up. And the Sergeant Major said, we don't want this kind here. You know, why didn't they join during the war? You know, the battle to kick Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. Why didn't they do that then? Oh, it's starting to rain. Bugger. And what happened was that they put all these potential recruits, wannabes, around the edge of the drill square. And the Sergeant Major came up to us and said, I'm going to drill you now. I'm going to really drill you. You know, shouting and bawling, left, right, about turn, and all that kind of stuff. And it really gave us a good hammering. And of course all these wannabes are watching us being drilled to death with him screaming his head off. And the weird thing was that this Sergeant Major actually dated my own mother before she dated my father. When I found that out, I said, oh, don't go too hard on us, Dad. Oh, so we were being hammered, like, you know, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Screamed at left, right and centre. And, well, the very next drill night, do you know how many turned up? 3. 2 of them were ex-cadets, and one of them, and the other one had a brother in the services already. So there, that's pretty much the story of how I joined the Army Reserves. So when I eventually did do my basic training, and our sergeant was shouting and bawling at me, like, for not doing things right, I would smile back. I would smile back at him, and he got a bit pissed off that I was smiling at him. But later on, after the drill that we're doing during basic training, I went up to him and I said to him this story about all these wannabes joining, or trying to join. And I told him the story, and I said to him, you know, sorry Sergeant, but I realise it's your job to shout at us. You're not actually personally having a go at me. So after I smiled at him, he didn't have a go at me anymore, he just had a go at everyone else.